Good to see you, mate.
Yeah, likewise. Pretty pro-looking mic you got there, man.
Yeah, this makes me sound half decent. When did we last catch up? Was that Danielle's wedding?
Yes, it would have been.
How long ago is that? Two years?
Yeah, got to be a couple of years now.
Yeah. Mate, as pretty as you are, I'm only getting the top half. Can you come? Now I've lost it completely.
Oh, just sit up.
Oh, you can stay down, but just couldn't see, only see half of you.
That's all good.
Mate, what we talked about yesterday was awesome. Are you all right to chat about that, given that we're recording now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No worries.
All right, cool. And I'm eating licorice bullets and drinking tea. Hope that's okay.
Mate, whatever gets you through.
I need my sugar. Cool. So, whereabouts are you living these days?
Mate, I live in Artarmon, just in the north part of the city.
Yeah.
Which once upon a time was a swanky neighbourhood, and now it's just as expensive as everywhere else. So
yeah, right.
It's nuts.
How long have you been there?
Not too long, probably about 3 months or so, 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you moved there for work, or?
Yeah, well, it's close to Artarmon's like little Japan. Like the Japanese community in Sydney is kind of focused around here in Chatswood. So it's good for the missus, and her work is not too far from here, which is kind of a part of that.
Yeah, cool.
I'm like 3 stops on the train line down in North Sydney, so it's just no brainer, man.
Yeah, right. Okay. And where were you before that? Where were you living before that?
Ashfield.
Close by, is that?
No, it's a fair whack during peak hour. It's a fair travel. So we probably cut down about probably an hour of travel for me and about 2 hours of travel for the girl.
Oh, there you go.
Per day. So
get a little bit of a life back.
Yeah, or at least some more functionality. Anyway, I don't think I use the time wisely, to be honest. But it's more time where I'm not on public transport, so I'll take it.
Yeah, sure, that's a good thing. It's interesting you talk about public transport and trains, and it's obviously just a way of life where you are in a busy area in New South Wales. But where I've grown up, Sunshine Coast, Queensland, and now being North Queensland, you might see a bus every 6 hours. Right. You got no trains out this way, so if you haven't got a car, you're kind of stuck at home all day.
When you say North Queensland, whereabouts are you?
Yeah, not necessarily all the way up, but I'm in a little place called Wandai, which is sort of near Kingaroy. So where we were on the coast, it's probably 2.5 hours north from the coast.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I've been here for a couple of months. Loving
Excellent.
it. Yeah, mate. Yeah, so it's a whole different world from what you're used to.
Mate, I hate it. I absolutely. I used to think I loved it, but it was just because somehow the insides matched the outsides, and as I become less frenetic over time, the less I enjoy it. Like I just really don't.
What does that mean? The insides versus the outsides?
Well, I guess like my internal world was really chaotic, and my thinking was chaotic, and my emotional states were chaotic, and being in a chaotic environment just kind of made sense. You know what I mean? Like my internal world kind of matched that, and it made sense a little bit. And now, as I'm kind of chilled out and
you've calmed down.
Yeah, but Sydney hasn't.
Sydney's still on drugs, but you're not.
Yeah, well, mate. Even without the drugs, it's got. I was just as chaotic, even worse. That was what didn't make sense to me. Is that I put the drugs down and I just got more insane.
Wow, that's like a good tourism slogan for Sydney.
Yeah,
Sydney on drugs.
Pretty much.
Nice. Yeah. Well, mate, let's go back a little bit. So, from sort of early teens, tell me about where you were living, and where were you going to school, and how were you going in school and stuff like that.
Yeah, I grew up Chester Hill, which is kind of like the southwest of Sydney, which is yeah, it's not particularly bad or not particularly good, you know. Like I used to have a real story around that I was from like the mean streets kind of thing, but it's suburbia, you know, like it's not Compton or something, you know. Like,
It's not the Bronx.
no, having said that, there was an area there called the Bronx, and it was kind of a no-go zone for the Bronx.
Okay.
So, but they ended up bulldozing that. They sorted that out quick, smart.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, and I just kind of yeah, I can't really describe it any more than that, really. You know, like
Well, how old were you then? This is like still like early high school or end of primary school?
End of primary school, early high school.
Mm-hmm. Were you a good student? Because you're a
No,
really intelligent guy, and I've always known that of you. Did that sort of show through in your grades?
no, it didn't. there was some ways it did. You know, there's different forms of intelligence, and what I learnt to do was to mimic things very, very well. So I learnt to take in things and to be able to kind of parrot them back. So I developed a really, really good memory. And then, but the problem solving kind of situation wasn't really good. So I got to about year 8 and year 9 where I couldn't kind of remember everything anymore. And, you know, I just kind of didn't know how to keep up with everyone. So, you know, I was really good at telling everyone how smart I was.
Yeah.
And then when it came time to actually like learning how to develop that skill and learn how to learn, you know, I didn't learn that bit, you know. And
got it.
so then I kind of started to fall behind. I was already my goose was cooked or before that bit, you know. Like there was a couple of years before that where I started to it started to become apparent that my internal world that I started to talk about earlier just kind of didn't fit in. It wasn't the same as the other guys around me, and it was kind of a bit, you know, a bit more. Like I just didn't seem to emotionally cope in the same way. You know, like they'd have something come up, and I'd just fucking fall to pieces. Can I swear?
Yeah, mate, that's all right. Go for your life.
Yeah, it's just for me to keep that contained for half an hour is not going to be that easy.
It's funny. Like when I first started doing this, no one was watching, so you could swear all you wanted. These days, there's more people watching, so I sort of pull it back. But you feel free to go to town. I want you to be as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, good.
So, would you say that you were a popular kid or well liked?
Yeah, I don't think I was hated. What the problem was is that I spent so much of my time and energy trying to tell everyone what I was. There was no kind of actual real connection with other people. You know what I mean? Like I just had this front of just to hide behind. So, you know, I was telling everyone I was tough. I was telling everyone I was smart, and I, you know, had this wall of that subterfuge, you know, kind of for everybody else to see. And then, you know, and that was like, I thought that was, you know, what I was supposed to do. I thought that was what everybody else was doing. And I didn't kind of know the difference, you know. And it was,
why do you think you were doing that? Was it just because you thought everyone else was doing it, or like knowing you now in your late 30s, do you know what that was?
yeah, absolutely. You know, I just kind of had a core belief system that I wasn't acceptable as I was. And, you know, that was kind of instilled at a pretty young age. You know, I don't want to point the fingers at, you know, at parents or anything like that, but that's where the operating system kind of gets loaded in kind of very early on. And the message that I took, and it was never said to me, you know, no one said you're worthless or you're not okay, but just there was a constant, you know, inference that I wasn't acceptable, you know, that I wasn't, my clothes weren't neat enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't perfect. So I just kind of was so sensitive to those messages of not being acceptable or lovable that I kind of just tried to be perfect in everything.
To everyone else, that must have been tiresome.
Yeah, it's absolutely exhausting, and I didn't know that I was doing it. You know,
Yeah.
I developed that kind of very, very early on. You know, like I didn't know that was even a thing until it all started to kind of catch up with me. You know, and I couldn't keep that up in an adult world. You know, in a kid's world that was okay, but around 13, 14, it really the cracks started to appear, and I started to become very depressed and very anxious.
What changed then? What changed when you hit 13, 14?
I think just the abject terror, like life starts to change a lot. You start to have to look at to take on a lot more responsibility. And that's kind of like the transition into adulthood. And I was just kind of staring it in the face, just going, my God, I am ill-equipped. I am just not really able to do this.
Yeah. Well, do you have examples of that? Like what was going on in your life for you to go, shit, I'm going to struggle in this adult world?
What I didn't really know what it was at the time, but I just didn't have everybody else had formed an identity during that schooling time.
Mm.
I'd spent the whole time pretending to be someone else. And I just knew that I just kind of didn't have a real kind of solid sense of self, and I just kind of had nothing to build on.
Do you think that a lot of kids were probably like that? Like you just said, they'd all formed this sense of identity, but how do you know that, right? Like they could very well have been like you.
Yeah, it could very well. I don't really know, to be honest.
No, but you just had this thought that everyone had their stuff sorted out and everyone except you.
Yeah, and I guess that was kind of back to that internal world. I compared my insides to people's outsides. Everybody's outsides looked okay, but my insides were just awful, man.
Wow. That's what Facebook is to me. Everyone puts out their best 5 minutes of the day. That's all you see. You don't see the other 23 hours and 55 minutes. You just see that 5 minutes of perfection.
Mate, that's what everything's been sold to us, like if you get that new SUV, if you do this, you do that, like it's all on offer, you'll have the best 5 minutes to put on Facebook that you ever had. Only cost you 38 grand and 18 years of debt.
Yeah.
And
But you're sort of saying that you were seeing that 5 minutes of someone's life and thinking mine isn't like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, and I didn't understand what perfectionism was or anything like that, but there was no way for me to feel okay. Like even if I got 100% on a test, it didn't fix it.
Wow.
So there was that kind of,
What do you think you were hoping for or searching for or hoping to get?
Honestly, I think it was just kind of like love and acceptance, but without any capability to give myself that stuff. Just kind of really looking for it from somewhere, someone to tell me that I was okay.
And this is at 13, 14.
Yeah, and mate, I can honestly say that it was happening well before that too.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take that much for a kid to get that. If you've got even half a talent at something, or a little bit smarter than the average bear, or whatever, someone will kind of pat you on the head and go, "Wow, that's awesome." But yeah, being a moody teenager doesn't fly so easily.
Do you think though, like, because I have this conversation with people all the time. You can get 99 compliments, and one person says, "Geez, you're a dickhead," and you will focus on that one.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing. I couldn't even hear the other 99. All I could hear was that, because it matched up with what I actually believed.
Sure.
And there's a lot of reasons for me to believe that. I was a very, I'd spent so much time building up this front that I didn't even know what emotions were. So when I talk about not really having that core kind of sense of I didn't even know what was going on for me at any given point in time. So it's a pretty hard place to live. And when you've got that internal dialogue that's just so callous, I was just constantly on guard for that one comment out of the 99.
Just waiting for it.
Yeah, and as soon as I got it, I was like, "Oh, there you see, I told you."
I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mate, I don't think you're alone in that boat, just quietly.
No, I'm starting to see that, this is kind of the human condition,
100%.
I see addicts and people with mental illness have got like a little bit more of an acute version of the human condition. Really, it's not, I don't see it as being particularly broken or anything.
So How are things at home at this point?
Um, I learnt that pretend kind of keep a brave face up, don't be connected to things there, so, everything was okay, and I was treated okay as long as I kept that together and kept that face up. Um, and as soon as the cracks started to really appear in that, and that I couldn't kind of keep it together, I started to get into a lot of trouble, and, it just wasn't, my mum took it pretty personally that I wasn't okay. And that was where I learnt that from, that how I was a direct reflection of her, in a kind of real kind of like narcissistic kind of, if I told my mum I felt sad, I'd get punched,
Wow.
so you learn to keep your mouth shut, but
So you would say that you're struggling and you not feel loved, and she would physically punch you?
well, yeah, I remember particularly in one instance, I kind of just kind of expressed that stuff. I probably would have been about 6 or 7, and I was just I'd kind of just gone through the family breakup stuff, and it was just hell, and I just kind of was really on my own with it. And I tried to kind of reach out to her, and I just kind of said, fuck, I wish I was dead.
Wow.
And she just opened up on me. And,
At 6 or 7?
Yeah. Because what she heard was something different, and I'm not trying to justify it, but, and it still brings up a lot of stuff, and, and she completely compartmentalized it, and it didn't happen as far as she's concerned. But, I wasn't alone in that. That wasn't an isolated incident either,
Yeah. Okay. Even now, she would say that didn't happen.
Yeah. Now she's starting to come to the points where she kind of gets it.
Yeah.
She knows that where she's at probably isn't. As, or we'll put it this way: as I've done my work and my healing, I've had to front a lot of this stuff with her, and she's had to wear it. She's kind of been dragged along for the ride, as I kind of not tolerate the behaviour anymore.
Okay.
As I start to learn my boundaries and start to figure out how to exist with this stuff, and, if she wants to control or that sort of stuff, I kind of just, sorry, you can do this with someone else.
Tell me about that control, because that's something that sort of really stood out for me in our last conversation. And this will sort of tie into the drugs a little bit, I suppose. But you had to be in control even at that early age, or was it more you were getting controlled?
I think one begets the next. Like if someone's, kind of being controlling, you learn that as a skill set. So, definitely I wanted to control how I felt at the very least, and hopefully how other people saw me. And again, that's an incredibly painful kind of place to be. Living your entire existence for the outside world around you. It's just really,
and trying to control that, yeah.
Yeah, and as a a kid or a teenager, it's very, very difficult. You just have so little to work with, So if something like drugs comes along, you kind of jump at it, because it's just something that I can control my fear. I didn't even really know that I was afraid, but I saw it as an absolute savior, and I still do. Like I don't know what I would have done if I didn't find drugs at that time, because I was on an edge. I was really about to crack. And
why? What sort of things were happening?
Like just because of that lack of control and even if you do get the control, it only works a certain amount. You end up with just huge amounts of pain. So I'd rage and act out, and be really destructive. I ended up getting put in a psych ward kind of even before. Like I'd used drugs a couple of times, but I was too young to kind of know how to get on all the time. So, but my behaviour was just so kind of out there and volatile that I kind of got stuck in a psych unit for a couple of months when I was about 14. And just because I was uncontrollable, and I just.
What sort of things were you doing?
A teacher had asked me to open a window, so I just punched them out.
The teacher?
No, the windows.
A teacher would ask you to open the window and you would just go and punch the window.
Yeah. Well, it's open now.
Wow.
And be like, not really, and I almost hit a teacher once, but I like would threaten them all the time.
Yeah.
They would have to kind of call people to come to the school to try and kind of extricate me and stuff. And, so they just kind of put me in that ADHD kind of mentally ill basket and said, somebody else kind of take care of it. So I was looking for ways to be bad at that point, to get some kind of relief, something to be in control of.
What was your mum and dad? Dad obviously split by this stage. Were they? Was your dad around? What was going on?
Yeah, they were, but I kind of couldn't hear anything. Like they weren't, really much of a. Well, I can't say much of a help. They were there, but they just didn't really know what to do.
Mm.
They weren't really emotionally equipped to deal with that sort of stuff. I don't think. And I guess all the experts were kind of telling them that I was nuts. So like, there's, they kind of just did what they were told and just kind of went with it, and just kind of hoped, I guess, that I would kind of settle down, but,
Were you nuts? Would you say you were nuts at that stage?
Not at all. Absolutely not. I was completely sane. What I was in a lot of pain. And just had no way to kind of cope with it. I was in a lot of fear and a lot of pain and just had no kind of life coping skills. All of that stuff kind of got shelved when I started to kind of make that front fake personality stuff. And the development kind of stopped. So when I kind of hit this age, I at about, 14, 13, I just kind of didn't have anything else to kind of work with, and I'm sure this happens so much, man.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no doubt. So when a teacher says, can you go and open the window and you go and punch the window, like where does your head go at that point? Why punch the window? Is it to rebel against being told what to do because you're not in control of that, or what do you think it is?
Yeah, well, there was just a kind of baseline rage about that situation, and kind of even getting a simple instruction was enough to trigger it. Even if it was completely reasonable, I was just kind of like a piece of chaos, just looking for a place to happen. Really, like any excuse, be it another kid or whatever, would just snap because I just couldn't contain it. It's just in so much rage and fear.
Yeah.
Just like a caged animal, and I know now that I was just in lots of trauma, I'd been, and it just needed to be processed and dealt with, but that was going to be a long way coming yet. So
yeah, well, you're just a young teenager, right? You wouldn't know what the words processing and stuff like that even meant at that stage.
No, by that time I was kind of a bit too damaged to kind of even really hear it. I kind of needed to go kind of full circle, to kind of get humbled. Because I had all the answers. If you had asked me anything,
you knew the textbook answers.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
What's the psych ward like for a 13-year-old?
Mate, it's not fun. A lot of forced druggings and that sort of stuff. Like, they don't tolerate the
punching windows.
No,
they don't like that.
That's got a short life. They let you get away with it once or twice.
Yeah,
and
right.
Say, nah, come here, champ.
Yeah, okay.
Sort you right out.
What's the forced drugging like? Is it like in the movies? They hold you down and make you swallow.
Yeah, or shoot you up with stuff. And it's in the kind of, I was self-harming a lot at that point as well. So, probably made a lot of sense that, if I was having a kind of, I'd cut myself to trying to kind of feel and trying to connect to kind of with myself. And, so they put me on psych meds and stuff, and none of it made any difference at all. If anything, it made it worse. In the end, they transferred me from there to an adult kind of acute psych unit because they couldn't kind of contain me anymore there. So, that was in with murderers and nut real kind of nutcases and
Wow.
stuff.
At 14.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
behaviour got curtailed pretty quick. Smart. There wasn't any tough guy window punching.
You weren't out to show people how tough you were then.
I was very, very quiet.
Yeah, right. Wow.
So it worked at some level.
Yeah, you didn't need drugs for that.
Nah.
Okay. Well, so when did not the forced drugs, obviously, but you taking drugs, did that start around that time or?
I'd already managed to use a couple of times by that point. Like I just, when I was 13, I managed to steal some from a mate's neighbour. I saw him growing a crop and stuff, and nicked over the fence and grabbed some, and had a smoke with a couple of mates and stuff. And the odd occasion I'd be able to sneak some booze or whatever, but nothing really. But when I kind of got out of that psych unit, and I kind of decided I'd leave school and go and become a welder with my old man, that was when I kind of found how to use all the time.
Yeah, right. And you were how old at this stage?
I would have been just 15.
Okay. Got out of school because that wasn't the place for you. Went and worked for your dad as a welder.
Well, that was the plan. I just couldn't do it anymore. Not after being in a psych unit for a couple of months. Like I was already behind, and now I was branded a nutcase. And people gave me a wide berth, which was good because I was really scared, of being in physical confrontations and stuff.
Yeah, right.
So that was good, but the whole school thing wasn't really working for me anymore.
So why did you say what happened with the welding job?
Well, all it did was kind of give me regular income and money to kind of plow into drugs, and I degenerated very quickly. I was kind of saying on the phone the other day that other people kind of have the fun time and the party time with their drug use, and then they kind of hit their late 20s or something, and it's not working for them anymore. And it wasn't like that for me at all.
You never had the fun time.
It was fun-ish, but it was a source of relief. It was medicine from the first time I touched it. Like the first time I got properly kind of stoned, I was just like, oh, thank God for that. There's something that turns this off. And I kind of
what changed when you were really stoned?
I didn't need to control everything. So I kind of just got that relief from that kind of chronic self-obsession. Just kind of constantly thinking about me and how other people see me and how I'm interacting with the world, and the constant self-appraisal and what's going on. And, I had smoked a couple of bongs and just went, oh, wow. It's all it's okay. Everything's going to be okay for 3 hours, and then it very quickly came back. But, kind of the first time I got properly smashed, I kind of thought, well, this is what I'm going to do.
Just keep doing this.
I found the thing. Everybody obviously doesn't understand why I need to do this, but that's not really my problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I credit it with saving my life, mate. I was suicidal. I really.
Well, you touched on that, didn't you? You started to talk about the self-harm stuff. So if you don't mind, let's chat about that. Like, do you remember the first time you did that? And was it a scary thing or was it a relieving thing?
The first kind of like suicide attempt, I probably would have been about 11 or 12. I tried to hang myself. And again, it was just out of being exasperated. And, I just didn't have anywhere else to go. And I remember feeling a bit relieved when I found out you could kill yourself. So it's just like, okay, well, there's a back door. if I don't pull this off.
Worst comes to worst.
Yeah, worst comes to worst, you just check out. And, but the other than that, like I kind of had a whole bunch of half-hearted attempts. But I used to cut myself a lot and burn myself a lot. And it just used to provide me with some relief, like some way to externalize what was going on inside me that I just couldn't even understand or even communicate to anybody else. because I didn't know what it was.
Can you give me the one sentence of what that is? Because I'm not entirely getting it. What is the thing that's going on in your head for you to need to slice and burn yourself and try to hang yourself to get some relief?
Now I know it as that control. Moreover, it's the being disconnected from the fear that drives that control. So I was just this constantly terrified mess of and the terror was around, am I lovable and am I acceptable? Because I'd got told that I wasn't. So the way I medicated that was just this. I just developed this behavior, this obsessive behavior to be perfect all the time. And that was what causes the pain. I didn't know I was scared. I couldn't feel it because I was constantly had my hands around its neck trying to choke it to death in control. And, when you're so disconnected from yourself, I didn't know what joy, love, fear, shame, guilt, pain. I didn't know what any of those things were. I didn't experience them. All I'd experienced was just rage and the need to control. That was it.
And for that need to be perfect and loved and accepted and appreciated.
Yep. Which even if someone gave me, like being in control, I couldn't have it anyway.
Got it.
So.
And that's just constantly going on. There's like 100 voices in your head constantly telling you you're not good enough, you're not good enough.
Well, it's almost like a physical compulsion. Like it's not even like I can't even hear those voices. It's just the baseline operating system. It's just what is at any given point. Like it just, I didn't even sort of even get any breaks in it until I was probably, 25 or older. And then I started to, through people teaching me how to let go of that control, to get it through helping other people, because it stops that me thinking about me. I'm thinking about somebody else. So it just kind of punctures these holes in it, and you kind of, fuck.
Get some relief, yeah.
Yeah. But then you think that's another method of control. So you try and compulsively help people all the time, and you kind of got to unlearn that, and kind of go, fuck, I just got to let go.
It's another drug sort of thing.
Mate, yeah, it is. Well, anything can be a drug.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says he has another licorice bullet. Tell me about the first that time you tried to hang yourself. Obviously, it didn't work. What happened then?
Mate, yeah, my knot tying was pretty ugly. So I've just hit the extent of the rope, and I got a huge almighty jolt and an amazing rope burn around my neck. Wow. And just fucking hit the deck sobbing.
At 11?
Yeah, it would have been about that.
You tell your mum or dad that?
Oh, mate, they saw the rope burn. So, and I kind of made some story up about it, that, mate from school.
Having a fight or whatever.
Yeah, and push came to shove or whatever, and that was it. So I didn't really front it.
They found out about it. So what did they do at that point?
Yeah, not much. They were kind of at a loss, really, I think. I think that, there wasn't a lot of coping skills on either side. Kind of, that they knew, I kind of, in retrospect, mate, I just see them as medicating the pain of their own childhood with mine, so, if they were really poor, then they got lots of stuff and made everything shiny and nice, or, on the dad's side of things, there was a lot of trauma there, and, kind of just tried to be kind of there and present and do stuff with me and stuff, which I'm sure is what he didn't get from his old man. But as far as any of their, their own trauma, it was all not dealt with, right. So they kind of shrugged and just went, oh, fuck, what do we do? He's cutting sick again, so.
Okay. All right. So you started doing drugs. You obviously enjoyed it. It was some relief for you. And you got this job as a welder with your old man. How long did you last in the job?
He let me come back a couple of times, and I probably would have been less than a year. So I managed to progress from kind of smoking pot every day to intravenous drug use in that amount of time. And again, I kind of had that experience similarly when I shot up speed for the first time. It was kind of like, somebody else in one of the groups I go to said it was like God came down and gave me a hug and said, "You're my favourite." And
Wow.
just again, like, we've arrived. We've gotten the thing that we needed. I'm full of piss and vinegar and confident and angry and all that stuff. It was just all okay, and I felt like I could connect to people.
Was it because the marijuana wasn't doing enough anymore, or did you sort of end up with another group of people? How did you first get into? I'm assuming it's heroin that you started to shoot up.
Amphetamines first, and then heroin later. It was more like once I found what pot had to offer, I wanted to try all of it. I really kind of thought, well, if this is this good, like I want everything that's on offer here. I want to have like as much control in my arsenal as I can to kind of at least to be able to medicate this stuff. And for me it was a ticket out of where I was. So
in your head, you mean?
Yeah, it was. It was
Got it.
As far as I was concerned. And
tell me about the first time you shot up.
Shot up speed was the first injection I had. And as I said, man, it was like one of God's hugs, like I was able to really I felt like I could connect to the person I was with. And that's a large part of it as well, just the constant isolation that kind of goes with being in that controlling mode. Like if you're thinking about what they think about you, you're not just kind of present and kind of sharing time with another human being. So there's this wall around you, and it's safe, but it's not there's not a lot of love there. And it just felt like that wall came down and I could kind of have some time with that person. And it was, again, like this huge relief in that regard. It's just a connection to another person and energy and fun and happiness and all that sort of stuff.
So you were seeing someone at that point? Is that what you're talking about?
It was just with the guy that I was shooting up with.
Oh, got it. You had a friendship there that you could really relate to.
Yeah, which before that was, previous to the shot was me trying to think about what he would think about me.
Got it.
I didn't know that was what I was doing, but
it was always there. Yeah.
Then I kind of pushed the plunger in a way that went. I was just like, oh my God, this can be turned off.
Yeah.
Fuck. Thank God for that.
Got it.
And again, I just went, well, that's it. This is what I'm doing now. So, this job's kind of getting in the way. And, that kind of left me with no way to get money. So I just turned to crime and selling pretty much. That was pretty much.
You said that your dad let you back in a couple of times. Had you left or he kicked you out of the business? What was happening in that 12 months?
It was more later on, over in the kind of like the subsequent kind of a couple of years.
Okay.
But at that time I kind of just said, yeah, it's not for me. I'm going to go and do something else. And
which was go and become a criminal.
Pretty much just go and become a full-time kind of career drug user. That was the plan at that point.
Was that honestly the plan? Like, did you say, I'm going to just do drugs all the time? I'll find a way to finance this.
Yeah, pretty much. Like just the thought of like turning up to work every day, just in this constant state of kind of anxiety, depression and pain was just horrific, man. Like it was just like being sentenced to death, And someone gave me an option, it didn't look like a particularly good option, but it was better than that. So I took it, and I just kind of, I was knocking around with guys that were kind of doing that as well. And, they were seemingly being okay and successful at it. So I decided I'd do it too.
Tell me about that. So what does you being a criminal look like? What sort of things did you do?
Obviously no Ocean's 11 kind of stuff. But it was all pretty dismal and low level, and most of it out of desperation. Like I wasn't the sort of guy that really wanted to do that stuff. And I knew guys that actually really enjoyed that aspect of it. But more, it was like I'd run out, and that fear and pain would come back, and I'd just be like, oh my God, I've got to do something, So, lots of things that were pretty cowardly, like grabbing things and running away. So I'd run into a shop and grab something and just bolt. There wasn't
Like what? What would you grab?
cast areas or electrical equipment or whatever, and I just pretty much did my shopping like that for a long time, for years. Like I never bought anything. I just walk in and grab as much as I wanted and just run.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much the bulk of it. I robbed people. We'd roll people if we needed to. Stole cars. A big thing for a while was stealing batteries.
Out of cars?
No, out of like Woolies and stuff.
Okay.
Because batteries were very expensive, and you could go in and steal like a couple of $100 worth at once and just run. So I just kind of run in and grab all that I could, and just do the runner.
And do what with them?
And quite often we could just swap them directly for drugs, because they were worth that much that we'd get 10 cents in the dollar for them.
Right.
So we'd swap, $1,000 worth of batteries and get $100 worth of
drugs.
So you just steal a car and go to a few places and get as much as you can. And so we'd be walking around Cabramatta at the time with these huge bags of batteries. Real winning sort of stuff.
Did you ever get caught?
Yeah, heaps. I wasn't even good at it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would happen when you get caught? What would they do?
Well, sometimes most of the time they just wanted the batteries back, to be honest. So there's not even that much point, like if you don't care, what's the point of calling the cops, really, as long as they get the batteries back. But it's quite often they did call the cops, and you might get a charge or you might get a hiding or whatever. They just quite often they were just so angry that they got called for something like that.
Yeah. What's the worst thing you did trying to get drugs?
Let's say the worst stuff, the stuff that I'm the most ashamed of is bashing people. Just that sort of stuff, because stealing from Woolies, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they're insured; it'll sort itself out in the end. But the stuff where I stole from people, like that leaves a mark. It does. The stealing from family, because if I'm desperate, I'll go for the easy targets first. So stealing from my brother, stealing from my parents, my grandmother, people that have passed on now that I can't really say sorry for that stuff for. I got to make my amends while they were still here, thankfully. That stuff.
That's tough. Yeah, right. All right, so let's fast forward a little bit then. So when did you first say, I want to stop taking drugs, and why did you get to that point? What was happening then?
The first time I even kind of contemplated it was when, within that year after kind of starting that job and stuff, and I got refused bail after doing a whole big crime spree, and with huge amounts of carnage and damage in my wake, and sitting in detention, in juvenile detention, just thinking, how did it come to this?
How old were you then?
16.
Yeah.
And just kind of being, absolutely terrified and just in so much, and now in withdrawal as well, and in pain, and just sitting there, just kind of like just bargaining with the universe, just praying, if you get me out of this one, I promise, I'm going to stop doing this shit, and I'm going to pull it all together and be a good human. And I didn't. I got bail, in the end, and I got bailed to a rehab, and I used while I was in that rehab. I got Anthony, my brother, to bring me drugs while I was there. I couldn't even get it together then. Under threat. Like, if I didn't complete that rehab, I was going away for years.
Wow.
And that didn't even stop me. The fear of that.
Is it because those voices were so loud, or because of the addiction? What was going on? Why were you still taking, even though you knew you'd go away for a long time?
All I knew was that I needed that relief, and it comes in such a seductive way, like there isn't kind of a problem solving capability to it, that you would think that there'd be a logical progression of thinking things out. If you're sitting in rehab at 16 years old with the threat of, years of detention, that you'd think I can use, and then I might just completely balls my life. But your brain just goes, you can use once, like that's all it comes up with. That's the end of the tape.
That's all he's got.
And then, yeah, exactly. You kind of just go, oh, well, fuck, I can use once, I'll probably just use once then,
Yeah.
It doesn't have, because it doesn't live there. It doesn't live in the problem solving part of the brain. That's not
right.
It doesn't exist. So, you always think of people as being, retarded or something for the decisions that they make, but it's perfectly logical to them at the time.
Got it. You just mentioned Anthony, your brother, and I'd like to chat about him a little bit later on, but I just want to ask a question. Did he ever do drugs with you?
Yeah. Lots. So I kind of first learnt to get on from his. Actually, the first time he ever smoked pot, he got it from me. So I went and robbed a guy and stole a whole bunch of pot when I was about 13, and took it. And he was only too keen to get into it with me.
Because he was 2 or 3 years older.
3 years older.
3 years, yeah.
But he was always a lot quieter.
Mm.
I was just a bit more gregarious and kind of loud, and just kind of able to navigate that world a little bit better, I think. But he had mates that were kind of pretty full on into using.
Got it.
And, he never used intravenously or any of that sort of stuff. He smoked heroin a couple of times, but we used to take eckies together and sit around and listen to music and stuff, and take acid together pretty much every weekend for years. Smoked pot every day together for many, many, many years. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So you first got sober. You went back after the bail. You went into this another psych ward, was it?
No, it was a rehab.
Sorry, rehab. But you were still taking then. So at what point did you say, right, I seriously need to stop this?
Well, I got caught using in there. And then that threat of the multiple years became a very crystallized
reality. Yeah.